Maya Chen sat alone at the back of the Galactic Military Academy's lecture hall, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display showing battle formations. Around her, alien cadets from dozens of species whispered and snickered, their conversations always seeming to die when she walked past. The Zephyrian next to her, with his crystalline blue skin and multiple arms, deliberately shifted his chair away when she tried to take notes. "Look at the little human," hissed a Cathari female, her serpentine tongue flicking out as she spoke to her friends. "Probably can't even lift a proper weapon with those weak little arms." Maya's pencil paused for just a moment before continuing across her notebook. She had heard worse. Much worse. For 3 years at the academy, she had endured the constant reminder that humans were the newest species to join the Galactic Federation, and by far the weakest. No natural armor like the rock-skinned Gorvani, no enhanced speed like the cat-like Felinar, no natural weapons like the Cathari venom or the Zephyrian energy projection. Just soft, pink skin and a brain that most species considered barely adequate. "Cadet Chen," called out Professor Veltar, his massive frame dominating the front of the classroom. The Gorvani instructor's voice rumbled like grinding stone. "Since you seem so focused on your notes instead of participating, perhaps you'd like to analyze the Battle of Zerion Prime for the class?" A collective snicker ran through the room. The Battle of Zerion Prime was considered one of the most complex military engagements in recent galactic history, involving 17 different species and lasting over 2 years. Even advanced cadets struggled with its intricacies. Maya slowly stood, her human height making her one of the shortest beings in the room. The Battle of Zerion Prime was ultimately decided not by superior firepower or numbers, but by a fundamental misunderstanding of resource allocation across multiple fronts. "Oh, this should be good," whispered a Felinar cadet, his ears twitching with amusement. "The hegemony forces controlled the primary continent and had superior numbers," Maya continued, her voice steady despite the mocking faces around her. "But they made the classic mistake of assuming that controlling population centers meant controlling the planet. They failed to account for the underground resistance networks and the fact that Zerion Prime's unique geology made traditional siege warfare obsolete." Professor Veltar's rocky features shifted slightly, what passed for surprise among his species. "Continue." "The turning point came when someone started systematically targeting not the military installations, but the supply chains, food distribution, water purification, communication relays, power grids. Within 6 months, the occupying force was spending more resources maintaining basic infrastructure than fighting the war. They never identified who was coordinating these attacks because they kept looking for a military commander when they should have been looking for someone who understood systems." The classroom had fallen silent. Even the usual whispers and electronic notifications from personal devices had stopped. The hegemony withdrew not because they were defeated militarily, but because they realized they were fighting someone who had turned the planet itself into a weapon. Someone who understood that in a complex system, you don't need to be the strongest component. You just need to know which components to remove. Maya sat back down, ignoring the stares from around the room. Professor Veltar's massive head tilted slightly, a gesture that among Gorvani indicated deep thought. "An interesting analysis, Cadet Chen. Perhaps more insightful than I expected from a first-year student." The snickers resumed as class ended, but they seemed less confident now. Maya packed her notebooks carefully, taking her time as the other cadets filed out. She had learned long ago that rushing just gave them more opportunities to accidentally bump into her or knock her materials to the floor. "Hey, human," called a voice behind her. Maya turned to see Zrakth, a massive Gorvani cadet who was easily twice her size and probably 10 times her weight. His rock-like skin was a deep red color, indicating he was from one of the warrior castes. That was a pretty speech back there. But you know what? Speeches don't win real battles. No, Maya agreed quietly, shouldering her bag. They don't. Zrakth seemed surprised by her agreement. Finally, some honesty. Humans are all talk, no action. That's why your species needed the Federation's protection just to survive first contact. Maya looked up at him, her expression unchanged. You're absolutely right. We did need protection. Damn right you did. Without the Federation, any one of a dozen species could have wiped you out before you even knew what hit you. Yes, Maya said simply. They could have. Zrakth's friends had gathered around now, sensing entertainment. So why are you here, little human? Why pretend you could ever be a real soldier? Maya was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes studying the alien faces surrounding her. When she finally spoke, her voice was so soft they had to strain to hear it. I'm not pretending to be anything. I'm just studying. Studying what? How to run away faster. Studying how different species think. How they fight. How they make decisions. Maya shifted her bag to her other shoulder. It's fascinating, actually. Did you know that Gorvani tactical doctrine is based almost entirely on direct confrontation? It's in your cultural DNA. You see an enemy, you charge at it until one of you stops moving. Zrakth's red coloring darkened with anger. And what's wrong with that? It's honest fighting. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's very effective against enemies who think the same way, but it does create certain blind spots. Like what? Maya looked around at the group surrounding her. Like assuming that because someone doesn't want to fight, they don't know how to fight. The corridor had grown quiet. Other cadets had stopped to watch the confrontation, sensing that something was building. Are you threatening me, human? No, Maya said calmly. I'm just making an observation. Your species values strength and directness. You respect opponents who face you head-on. But humans, we're different. We're not strong enough to fight fair, so we had to learn to fight smart. Zrakth laughed, a sound like boulders grinding together. Smart? Your whole species got conquered by the first aliens they met. Actually, we didn't. Maya's voice remained perfectly level. The Federation made contact with our governments first, but there were others. The laughter died. What others? The ones who thought humans would make good slaves. The ones who decided our planet would make a nice addition to their empire. The ones who figured we'd be easy to break because we were so obviously weak. Maya turned toward the exit, then paused. You should ask Professor Veltar about the Zirian Prime campaign sometime. Ask him who was actually coordinating those supply chain attacks. Ask him why the Academy has so much detailed information about battlefield tactics that were supposedly developed by some unknown resistance fighter. She walked away, leaving a group of very quiet alien cadets behind her. As she reached the corridor exit, she could hear Zrakth's voice, much less confident now. She's bluffing. She has to be bluffing. But Maya wasn't bluffing, and deep down, they all knew it. The Academy's database was extensive, containing detailed records of every major military campaign of the last century. But there were gaps in the Zirion Prime files. Tactical analyses that ended mid-sentence. Supply chain disruption patterns that were described but never explained. Psychological warfare techniques that had no documented origin. And if someone were to dig deeper into the Academy's records, they would find that Maya Chen's admission file contained some very interesting discrepancies. Her age was listed as 19 standard galactic years. Her homeworld was listed as Earth. Her previous military experience was listed as none, but her entrance exam scores were the highest in Academy history. Her tactical analysis essays read like they were written by someone with decades of field experience. And when she thought no one was looking, the way she moved through crowds was not the movement of a teenager who had spent her life in classrooms. It was the movement of someone who had spent years watching for threats, planning escape routes, and calculating exactly how many steps it would take to reach cover from any position. Maya Chen was keeping secrets, and as the other cadets were beginning to suspect, those secrets were much bigger than a quiet human girl who was better at homework than expected. In her small dormitory room that night, Maya sat at her desk reviewing the day's lessons. On the surface, she was just another struggling cadet trying to keep up with her alien classmates. But her notes were written in 3 different languages, contained tactical assessments that went far beyond the classroom material, and included detailed psychological profiles of her instructors and fellow students. She paused in her writing and looked out the window at the academy's training grounds. In the distance, she could see the lights of the planetary capital, a sprawling city that housed millions of beings from across the galaxy. It looked peaceful from here. Safe. Maya had learned long ago that appearances could be very deceiving. Her personal communicator chimed softly. A message appeared on the screen. Priority communication from Admiral Sarah Mitchell, Human Defense Command. Encryption level, maximum. Maya stared at the message for a long moment before opening it. The text was brief. Package delivered successfully. Target eliminated with 0 collateral damage. Recommend immediate extraction for Asset 7. Current cover may be compromised. Maya deleted the message and returned to her homework. Outside her window, the peaceful lights of the capital continued to twinkle in the darkness. And somewhere in the academy halls, alien cadets continued to whisper about the quiet human girl who didn't seem to belong. What they didn't know was that Maya Chen belonged exactly where she was. She had been sent to the academy for a very specific purpose. And that purpose had nothing to do with learning how to be a soldier. She was already one of the best soldiers humanity had ever produced. She was here to learn how to destroy them. The Academy's combat simulation chamber hummed with energy as holographic environments shifted around the cadets. Today's exercise was meant to test small unit tactics, with mixed species teams facing increasingly difficult scenarios. Maya found herself assigned to Team 7, along with Zrakth, 2 Felinar scouts, and a Cathari technical specialist. "Just stay back and try not to get in the way," Zrakth grumbled as their team materialized in a simulated urban environment. Ruined buildings stretched in all directions, with smoke rising from distant fires. "This is real soldier work." The mission briefing appeared in each cadet's head-up display. "Hostile forces have taken control of the city center. Your team must neutralize 3 strategic targets while avoiding civilian casualties. Enemy strength unknown." Maya studied the tactical display while her teammates argued about approach vectors. The mission parameters seemed straightforward, but something felt off. The enemy positions were too obvious, the civilian movement patterns too predictable. It reminded her of something she had encountered before. "I think this is a trap," she said quietly. Zrakth snorted. "Everything looks like a trap when you're afraid to fight." The Felinar scout, a female named Silra, flicked her ears dismissively. "The human's right to be cautious. She should stay here while we handle the real work." But Maya was already moving, slipping into the shadows between buildings with a fluid grace that made Silra's enhanced reflexes look clumsy. Before anyone could protest, she had vanished into the simulated urban maze. "Where did she go?" demanded Keseth, the Cathari specialist, her serpentine head swiveling to track Maya's movement. "Does it matter?" Zrakth hefted his massive plasma cannon. "One less weak link to worry about. Come on, let's finish this exercise." But as Team 7 advanced toward their first target, they walked directly into exactly the trap Maya had predicted. Energy weapons erupted from concealed positions, forcing them to take cover behind a damaged wall. The enemy had overlapping fields of fire, superior numbers, and perfect knowledge of their approach route. "This is impossible," Silra hissed as plasma bolts seared the air above their heads. The simulation parameters are wrong. No first-year cadets should face this kind of opposition. Through their comm channel, they could hear other teams reporting similar problems. What was supposed to be a training exercise had turned into a nightmare scenario that was defeating even the most advanced students. Team 7, this is Maya. Her voice came through their communications with startling clarity, no background noise or interference. I'm in position to assist. Do you want help, or should I let you handle this yourselves? Where are you? Zrath demanded, scanning the battlefield but seeing no sign of the human. Target building Alpha. I've been here for about 10 minutes. That's impossible. We've been under fire the whole time. No one could have crossed that kill zone. You couldn't have crossed it. I didn't need to. Silra's enhanced hearing picked up something that made her ears flatten against her skull. The enemy fire just stopped. They were right. The constant barrage of energy weapons had suddenly gone silent. In the distance, they could hear confused shouting from the simulated enemy forces, but no more shots were being fired in their direction. Team 7, your first target is neutralized, Maya's voice reported, moving to target Beta. Wait, Keseth called out. How did you neutralize an entire enemy position by yourself? I didn't fight them. Fighting is inefficient when you have other options. Before anyone could ask what that meant, the communications channel exploded with chatter from across the exercise area. Target Beta had just been eliminated. Then Target Gamma. In the space of 15 minutes, Maya had somehow completed the entire mission, while her teammates were still pinned down by the first enemy position. The simulation ended abruptly, and the urban environment dissolved around them. Professor Veltar's massive form materialized in the center of the chamber, his rocky features showing what might have been confusion. Cadet Chen, report to the instructor station. Maya emerged from where she had been crouched behind a simulated vehicle, her academy uniform somehow still clean despite having apparently crossed a battlefield. She walked past her teammates without meeting their eyes. Cadet Chen, Professor Veltar's rumbling voice carried a note of puzzlement. The simulation logs show some irregularities. According to the data, you eliminated 3 hardened enemy positions in under 20 minutes, with 0 friendly casualties and 0 civilian casualties. This is supposed to be impossible given the parameters we set. The parameters assumed conventional tactics, Maya replied simply. Explain. Maya activated the tactical hologram, showing a 3-dimensional representation of the simulated battlefield. The enemy positions were designed to counter direct assault. Overlapping fire zones, mutual support, clear sight lines, perfect against any frontal attack. Correct. So how did you overcome these defenses? I didn't overcome them. I ignored them. Maya manipulated the hologram, highlighting a series of passages that ran beneath the simulated city. Urban environments have infrastructure, maintenance tunnels, sewer systems, utility access. The simulation included these details for realism, but the enemy positions didn't account for them. Professor Veltar studied the display. You used the service tunnels to bypass the defenses entirely. For targets Alpha and Gamma, yes, but target Beta required a different approach. Maya highlighted a building adjacent to the second enemy position. Civilian structure occupied by non-combatants. The enemy couldn't fire on it without violating engagement protocols. You used civilians as cover? Zrath's voice carried a note of disgust. No. I used civilian infrastructure as concealment while I accessed the enemy position's power grid. Maya's fingers danced over the tactical controls, showing a series of connections between buildings. Cut power to their sensor array, then introduced a feedback loop into their communication system. They couldn't see, couldn't talk to each other, and couldn't coordinate their defense. The chamber had fallen completely silent. Even the other teams had stopped their post-exercise discussions to listen. The third target was the easiest, Maya continued. By the time I reached it, the enemy had redirected all their reserves to investigate the first two positions, standard protocol when facing an unknown threat. I walked in through the front door while they were looking everywhere else. Professor Veltar's massive head tilted in that gesture of deep thought. These tactics are not covered in any academy curriculum. No, sir, they're not. Where did you learn them? For the first time, Maya hesitated. When she spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. Experience. What kind of experience does a 19-year-old human have with advanced urban warfare? Maya looked around the chamber at the faces watching her. Alien faces showing confusion, suspicion, and something that might have been fear. When she spoke again, her voice was so quiet they had to strain to hear it. The kind of experience you get when your homeworld is invaded 3 times before you turn 16. The silence stretched out like a held breath. Professor Veltar's rocky features shifted in a way that suggested he was accessing academy records through his neural interface. According to your file, Earth had no military conflicts during your childhood. The planet was under Federation protection and experienced no hostile contact. The official records are correct, Maya said carefully. Earth experienced no official hostile contact. Explain the distinction. Maya was quiet for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her words carried a weight that made even Zrakh's aggressive posture falter. The Federation makes first contact with planetary governments. That's official policy. But sometimes, other groups make contact first. Pirates, slavers, species that don't recognize Federation authority. When that happens, there's usually a gap between the initial contact and when the Federation can respond. How long a gap? Professor Veltar asked. In Earth's case, 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. The number was delivered with the precision of someone who had counted every single one of those days. During that time, Maya continued, Earth's governments officially didn't know that aliens existed. The Federation couldn't intervene because they hadn't made contact yet, and the groups that had found us weren't interested in negotiation. Keseth's serpentine form had gone very still. What did they want? What they always want: resources, labor, territory. Humans were weak, technologically inferior, and had no allies. We seemed like perfect targets. But Earth is a Federation member world now, Silra protested. Your species survived. Maya smiled, and for the first time, the expression didn't reach her eyes. Yes, we survived. All of us. I don't understand. The first group that found us was called the Hegemony. They specialized in planetary conquest and resource extraction. Their usual method was to land a small occupation force, take control of key infrastructure, and gradually break a planet's resistance through systematic oppression. Maya paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the tone of someone reciting a tactical briefing. They established regional control centers in major population areas. Standard doctrine, but they made some assumptions about human psychology that turned out to be incorrect. What assumptions? They assumed that if they could break organized government resistance, the general population would submit. They assumed that humans would prioritize individual survival over collective action. They assumed that without advanced technology, we couldn't pose any real threat. The tactical hologram had shifted without anyone touching it, now showing a planetary map with red zones marking occupation areas and green zones showing something else. What are the green zones? Professor Veltar asked. Resistance networks. It turned out that humans don't actually need centralized authority to organize effective opposition. We're very good at informal cooperation when faced with an external threat. But resistance movements require weapons, training, coordination, Zrakh protested. Your species had none of those things. We didn't have alien weapons or alien training, but we had something else. Maya manipulated the display again, showing detailed infrastructure maps. We had intimate knowledge of our own world, every tunnel, every abandoned building, every maintenance access, every supply route, and we had absolutely nothing to lose. The display now showed a complex web of connections spreading across the entire planet like a nervous system. Within 6 months, the hegemony controlled every major city and industrial center on Earth. Within 8 months, they controlled nothing except the buildings they were physically standing in. We had turned our entire planet into a weapon. Professor Veltar's voice carried a note of something that might have been respect. And the second invasion? Maya's smile became a little sharper. The second group was called the Syndicate. They had studied the hegemony's failure and decided the problem was being too gentle. Their approach was more direct. How direct? Orbital bombardment of major population centers. Complete destruction of industrial infrastructure. Reduction of the human population to manageable levels for slave labor operations. The chamber was so quiet that the hum of the holographic projectors seemed deafening. They killed 2 billion people in the first week, Maya said conversationally, as if discussing weather patterns. Very efficient, much more effective than the hegemony's gradual approach. How did your species survive that? Silra's voice was barely a whisper. We learned. Adaptation is humanity's greatest strength. The Syndicate expected us to break, to surrender, to beg for mercy. Instead, we evolved. The holographic display shifted again, and suddenly the peaceful Earth geography was overlaid with a nightmare network of hidden installations, underground facilities, and concealed weapons positions. By the time the third invasion force arrived, Earth looked like a Federation member world, peaceful, recovered, no visible military installations. The raiders who attacked us were expecting easy pickings. Maya touched the hologram controls one more time, and the display exploded into a 3-dimensional representation of orbital space around Earth. Red dots representing enemy ships appeared, advanced toward the planet, and then disappeared. What happened to them? Professor Veltar asked. They learned that when humans have 3 years to prepare for uninvited guests, we can be very inhospitable hosts. Maya shut down the holographic display and looked around at her fellow cadets. Their expressions ranged from shock to disbelief to something approaching terror. The Academy wanted to know how a first-year cadet could complete an impossible simulation exercise. The answer is that I've been completing impossible missions since I was 13 years old. What you consider advanced tactics, I consider basic survival skills. She shouldered her equipment bag and started toward the exit, then paused. The Federation likes to say they saved humanity. That's not exactly true. The Federation stopped the fourth invasion force from ever reaching Earth. By the time they made official contact, we had already saved ourselves. Maya walked out of the simulation chamber, leaving behind a group of alien cadets who were beginning to understand that their assumptions about humans might be catastrophically wrong. And in the Academy's communication center, automated systems were already transmitting priority messages to military commands across the galaxy, messages that would fundamentally change how every species in the Federation viewed the quiet little world called Earth and its seemingly harmless inhabitants. Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Defense Force materialized in the Academy's main briefing room exactly 1 week after Maya's simulation exercise. His massive Gorvani frame seemed to fill the space, and his ceremonial armor bore the scars of a dozen major campaigns. With him came a full tactical analysis team and enough security personnel to lock down half the Academy. Maya sat quietly in the center of the room, her hands folded in her lap, looking like exactly what she was supposed to be, a nervous human teenager called in for questioning. Around the table sat Professor Veltar, Academy Commandant Jala, and several other senior officials whose expressions ranged from curiosity to deep concern. Cadet Chen, Admiral Kethvar's voice rumbled like an avalanche. We need to discuss some discrepancies in your Academy records. Yes, sir. Let's start with something simple. Your entrance examination scores. Maya waited, saying nothing. Perfect scores in tactical analysis, strategic planning, xenobiology, and applied physics. The highest marks in academy history, remarkable for someone with no formal military training. I study hard, sir. Admiral Kethvar activated a holographic display that showed Maya's test results alongside statistical analysis. These scores aren't just high, Cadet Chen. They're impossible. Some of the questions you answered correctly required classified information that isn't available in any academy database. I don't understand, sir. Question 47 on your strategic planning exam. You were asked to analyze a theoretical scenario involving orbital defense against multiple attack vectors. Your answer included specific details about Syndicate fleet tactics that are classified at the highest levels, information that officially doesn't exist. The room fell silent. Maya's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Question 62 asked for tactical recommendations regarding asymmetric warfare in urban environments. Your answer was a perfect recreation of Operation Silent Thunder, a classified human resistance operation that supposedly never happened. Maya looked around the room at the faces watching her. When she spoke, her voice was carefully measured. I may have been more thorough in my research than most students. Research using what sources? Commandant Jala leaned forward, her insectoid features sharp with interest. Cadet Chen, we've analyzed your Academy Library access logs. You've checked out exactly 12 books in 3 years, all basic introductory texts. You've used the computer terminals for a total of 14 hours, mostly for assignment submission. Where exactly did you conduct this research? For the first time, Maya hesitated. When she finally answered, her voice was barely audible. I didn't research the information, sir. I lived it. Admiral Kethvar's massive head tilted in that gesture of deep thought that was becoming familiar to Maya. We had hoped you would be more cooperative, Cadet Chen. Perhaps a different approach would be more productive. He activated another control, and suddenly the room's walls became transparent, revealing that they were not in the Academy briefing room at all. Through the clear walls, Maya could see the blue curve of Earth hanging in the void of space, and the distinctive architecture of Orbital Defense Platform 7. Welcome to Earth Defense Command, Agent 7. Maya closed her eyes for a long moment, then opened them with a completely different expression. The nervous teenager was gone, replaced by someone whose eyes held the weight of years and the cold calculation of a professional soldier. Hello, Admiral. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Your cover identity was excellent, Admiral Kethvar admitted. Maya Chen, 19-year-old civilian from Earth's education sector. No military background, no combat experience, just an unusually bright student who tested into the Academy program. Maya smiled, and this time the expression was sharp as a blade. The best covers are built on truth, sir. I am 19. I was born on Earth, and I did test into the Academy program. But you're not a civilian. No, sir. I haven't been a civilian since I was 12 years old. Commandant Jala's mandibles clicked in what might have been distress. The Academy has a strict policy against military operatives infiltrating the student body. The Academy has a policy against operatives from other species, Maya corrected. Earth isn't technically bound by those restrictions since we wrote our own membership terms. Admiral Kethvar activated another display, showing what appeared to be military service records. Agent designation, 7, real name, classified, age at first deployment, 12 standard years, operational history, 43 classified missions across 17 sectors, confirmed eliminations, 862 enemy combatants, tactical innovations, 37 new doctrines now used by Human Defense Command, mission success rate, 100%. Maya studied the display with professional interest. Those numbers are a little low, actually. The classified mission count doesn't include training operations or domestic security work. Domestic security work? Earth still gets visitors sometimes. Not all of them are friendly. Human Defense Command handles those situations quietly to avoid diplomatic complications. Professor Veltar's rocky features showed what might have been confusion. But Earth is a peaceful Federation member world. The official reports show no hostile activity. The official reports are correct, Maya said patiently. No hostile activity ever makes it into Federation databases because none of it lasts long enough to require official response. She stood and walked to the transparent wall, looking out at Earth's blue surface. The galaxy thinks humans are weak because that's what we want them to think. It's much easier to handle problems when nobody sees you as a threat. Problems like what? Commandant Jala asked. Slavers who think human children would make good merchandise. Pirates who decide Earth's shipping lanes look profitable. Warlords who want to test their new weapons on a soft target. Religious extremists who think humanity's existence violates their theological principles. Maya turned back to face the room, and her expression was utterly cold. Do you know how many groups have attempted to attack Earth in the last 5 years? 47? Do you know how many of those attacks made it into Federation intelligence reports? 0. Admiral Kethvar leaned back in his chair. Because they never happened officially. Because they never happened at all. Ships disappear in deep space. Navigation computers malfunction and send fleets into dead systems. Weapons suffer catastrophic failures during approach runs. Communication breakdowns prevent raid coordination. Sometimes entire military organizations just dissolve. When their leadership mysteriously vanishes, the room was silent except for the hum of life support systems. Agent 7, Admiral Kethvar said finally. What exactly is your mission at the Academy? Maya returned to her seat, once again looking like a teenager despite the revelations of the last few minutes. Intelligence gathering, sir. The Academy trains officers for every major military force in the galaxy. Students here will become the next generation of strategic planners, tactical innovators, and fleet commanders. You're learning how they think. More than that, I'm learning how they fight, how they plan, how they make decisions under pressure, what they consider possible and what they consider impossible, their strengths, their weaknesses, their blind spots. To what end? Maya was quiet for a long moment. And when she spoke, her voice carried a note of something that might have been sadness. Earth has been invaded 4 times in the last decade, Admiral. 4 times that we know about. The galaxy is not a safe place for humans. No matter what the Federation treaties say, every species in this room could destroy us militarily if they chose to. Our only defense is to make sure they never choose to. By gathering intelligence on potential threats. By making sure there are no potential threats. Maya met Admiral Kethvar's eyes directly. Every student who has attended the Academy while I've been here will carry something back to their home worlds. A memory of the quiet human girl who always sat in the back of the class. The girl who wasn't strong enough to fight fair, so she had to fight smart. The girl who could do impossible things when nobody was watching. A reputation. A legend. Humans are weak, but humans are clever. Humans can't fight, but humans never stop fighting. Attack a human world and you might win, but you'll never be sure which rock the survivors are hiding under, and you'll spend the rest of your existence looking over your shoulder. Maya stood again, and this time her posture was unmistakably military, despite her academy uniform. My mission here is almost complete, Admiral. In 6 months, I'll graduate and return to Earth. The students who trained with me will take command positions across the galaxy. And when they do, they'll remember that humans should never be underestimated. Admiral Kethvar's massive form seemed to deflate slightly. You've weaponized fear. We've weaponized uncertainty. Fear fades with time. Uncertainty grows stronger the longer you think about it. Maya smiled, and there was genuine warmth in the expression for the first time since the meeting began. Besides, it's not really a lie. Humans are everything they think we are. We're small, we're weak, We're technologically inferior, and we have no natural weapons. But we're also the species that took a dead world with poisoned air and toxic water and turned it into a garden. We're the species that built cities on floating platforms above crushing gravity wells. We're the species that survived 3 separate attempts at genocide and came out stronger each time. Maya walked toward the door, then paused with her hand on the control panel. The other species in the galaxy are stronger than us, Admiral. Faster, tougher, better armed, longer lived. But there's one thing humans have that nobody else does. What's that? We're the only species that learned to fight before we learned to fly. The door opened, and Maya stepped through into the corridor beyond. As she walked away, her voice carried back to the briefing room. Earth's children are going home soon, Admiral. I hope the galaxy is ready for what comes next. The door closed, leaving behind a room full of military officers who were beginning to understand that their assumptions about humanity had been not just wrong, but catastrophically inadequate. On Earth below, in facilities that didn't appear on any official maps, thousands of young humans were completing training programs that would have impressed even the Academy's most advanced instructors. They learned to think like Gorvani, fight like Felinar, plan like Kethari, and adapt like the survivors they had always been. And in the Academy's databases, the legend of Maya Chen was already spreading through informal networks, carried by cadets returning to their homeworlds with stories of the human girl who could do impossible things. Stories that would be shared in officer training programs across the galaxy, creating a reputation that would precede humanity into every future conflict. The galaxy had spent decades underestimating Earth's children. Soon, they would learn that humanity's greatest weapon had never been strength or technology or natural advantages. It had always been the simple fact that humans never, ever forgot a lesson. And the most important lesson of all was this: in a universe full of predators, the best defense was not to be the strongest prey. It was to be the one predator that nobody saw coming.